Hey, diet disruptors. I am having some technical difficulties, so I'm hoping this works. I am so excited about this live. This has been a topic that has been a long time in the making. I have been excited to share with you this topic and this thing I've been kind of going through. And I wanted to wait long enough after I actually did this little experiment on myself before I really shared it with you so I could see longer term how it impacted me. So if you got an email from me recently about how the fact that I gave up wine for 2 months and why I did it, I'm going to elaborate a little bit here on this live. So back in April, I made the decision to give up wine for 2 months. And I love wine. I love the art of wine. I don't drink a lot of it, especially at one sitting. I really am happy with a glass of wine, and that is all I need. It just relaxes me. I love to see how it pairs with foods. It's kind of my release at the end of a long, crazy day. My husband and I love to sit over a glass of wine and just chat about our day. So why in the world did I decide to give it up? Especially because if y'all know me, you know that I know how to drink wine correctly, right? It might not be healthy, but I know how to balance my PFCs and that wine is a carb and that I can pair it with a protein and a fat and some nutrient-filled light veggies, and I can count that as one of my meals, which is pretty awesome. So if wine wasn't overtaking my life, why in the world did I want to give it up? And why for 2 months? Well, I kind of got to thinking about my life, and it's kind of hectic, but also how I don't, especially I think a lot of us in this day and age, don't really want for very much. I know that if I need something, a book. I was at church the other day and we had a guest speaker and she talked about a book she wrote. So don't you know, I went on Amazon and literally less than 12 hours later, that book was on my front step. I love instant gratification. When I want something, I go for it. And I realized that that kind of has impacted my life in some funny ways. I don't like to deprive myself. And my husband and I joke that since I got into my 40s, I don't like to be uncomfortable. I don't like it when that little bit of rain is like hitting me and it's a little cold out and it's not really raining, but it's kind of misting. My husband's always laughing at me because I hate this and I don't want to feel uncomfortable. So I don't like that feeling of uncomfortable. And I kind of can justify to myself doing something. I can justify a glass of wine because I know how to drink wine. And believe it or not, I admitted this recently, is that up until this 2 month hiatus of wine back in April, I had never done my own 4 weeks to wellness lifestyle launch 100% perfect. Now, I know a lot of people do a few things here and there, and it isn't about being perfect on it at all. It's about an in-depth education and cleansing out your body. But I still justified to myself 1 or 2 glasses of wine during that month, and I never admitted it to people. And it was only because I don't like to feel deprived. I don't like to have to say no. And I notice that at a party or something, even if I have the intention of saying I'm going to have just, maybe one slice of pizza, or I'm not having dessert today because I know how dairy does with me and I'm not going to do it. And then I kind of get pressured into it and I end up doing it because I don't like to feel deprived. So I thought about, and I did this Bible study about the discipline of depriving and how powerful that is. And so I thought about what is it that I actually probably would miss the most if I took it out of my life. And I knew it would be wine because it is such an enjoyment for me, and it's such a thrill or thrill. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's a real enjoyment for me. And so I knew that that would be hard to give up. And I also knew during those 2 months, I had a girls' weekend that I was flying to Chicago for. I had a wedding to go to. I was my last 2 months living in Mexico where there was going to be going away parties and all sorts of great dinners. My husband had flown in. I was living in Mexico. My husband had flown in for a date night or date weekend and went out for amazing dinners. And I knew it was going to be hard for me not to have a glass of wine or any alcohol. I was going to say no, because it would have been easy to say no to wine and then gone and had a beer or something. And so I did it. And it felt really empowering. And what I realized throughout that time is that I can say no, I can replace it with something healthier, and I feel really good when I do it. And it taught me a discipline that I didn't have. So now, as I'm thinking about a purchase, for example, I hold off before I just automatically go and pull the trigger. Before I decide if I have 1 cup of coffee, sometimes I'm like, oh, I want that second cup. You know what? I can have it. It's not that big of a deal. I learned how to say no. I have learned how when I get a big portion at a restaurant and I know if I eat half of it now and half of it in 3 hours, it'll be a perfect PFC meal, I now can do that. And so by practicing a discipline of declining on one thing, it actually spiraled into other habits that were healthier and that were more productive. And now I really don't want to have a glass of wine like every night. I enjoy my glass of wine when it is something special. And I can say no at a party now. I said no at girls' weekend, for goodness sake. We were all sitting at a bar and I had sparkling water with lots of lime, and it felt good. I also had a lot of energy and I just felt physically awesome about it, but it really wasn't about that. It was really about that discipline. And when I think about our 4 Weeks to Wellness lifestyle launch, I am not about depriving ourselves at all. And I don't want us to feel deprived. But during those 4 weeks, we are giving up certain foods. We are giving up certain things that don't serve our body, but we like to have anyway. And I like to think about it as an opportunity to learn that discipline of declining, because in another month, you can have that stuff and you'll learn how to integrate it in correctly. But what that discipline teaches you at a much larger scale has been huge. So I had my first glass of wine after that on June 23rd, and it was like anticlimactic. I was so proud of myself for doing it, and I enjoyed that glass of wine, but it wasn't like I felt like I needed to go the next day and have another one. And I knew I could say no in a way that I couldn't do before. So anyway, that is my real kind of, I don't know, philosophical moment there. I don't know if that's what you'd call it, but I would love to hear from you. What are some kind of habits that you feel like by adopting a discipline of declining, you could actually trickle down into? So my discipline of declining wine trickled down into not having to be like kind of a crazy Amazon next day purchaser, making me think more about my purchases, making me think more about my reactions and parenting and marriage. Like, it's crazy how the discipline of declining gave me a discipline and self control in other areas of my life. So what is it that you think you need to adopt more self-control in? And what is it that you think you could give up to try to teach yourself that? Be interesting. I'll put the link to my blog that I wrote about it in here, and I'd love to hear from you. All right, that's all. Bye.